I actually see this in my clients all the time, is these aha moments that they get when they start to realize what the nervous system is and how things like burnout are actually just an adaptation of your nervous system. So literally all of these crappy symptoms that we're experiencing are your body's reaction to what's going on. It's protective measures.
Welcome back to our show. My name is Jenny Woon.
And I'm Toni Singh.
And we have a very special guest today. Her name is Rebecca Vigelius. Hi, Rebecca. How are you doing?
Hello, Jenny and Toni. I am doing great today. How are you two?
Awesome.
We're doing very good. Well, we're going to feel even better after you and I and us, we chat. Rebecca, you are not just a certified holistic stress coach and behavior change specialist, but you are our beacon of hope for those struggling to navigate through all the pressures of what we call modern life. Modern life being keeping busy and doing it all.
Jenny,
does this sound familiar?
Did you have Rebecca on today for me specifically?
You and me.
Okay.
And for all our listeners.
Yes.
Rebecca, why don't you start off telling our listeners, just to kick things off, how you got into this journey of like stress management and burnout?
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just say, like, you're having me on for me too, because keeping this conversation up is so important for all of us. This is a lifelong conversation. You know, we're going to go through ebbs and flows and phases, but being able to talk about the work that I do and also that helps me embody the work that I do, right? So I just want to say thank you for having me on because, yeah, talking about this stuff is so, so important. And so I know that firsthand. My background is in journalism. I was a TV news producer for about 10 years, and then I moved into public relations and communications. I was a vice president, executive level communications, corporate communications, and media relations. And, you know, everything's like, it was humming along and I felt like I was good. And, you know, I had a lot of stress in my jobs, but I felt like I was okay. And then I got to a place where I was working in-house as a VP communications. And long story short, that was a super toxic environment. And it did a lot of things. It brought up a lot of things. As we know, you know, I've heard you two talk on the podcast before about early childhood memories, things that can affect us as we go through our lives. And, you know, as I got into that position, I realized that there were things happening with my body, with my mind that were super confusing for me. And so I started going down a path of trying to figure that out. Why do I feel like this? Why am I procrastinating so much? Why do I feel like my confidence has been totally sapped? Like, I'm smart. I've been doing really good work my whole life. Why do I feel like this? And so as I went down that path, I started to understand stress. And I started to understand chronic stress. And I got a realization about burnout. And I was like, okay, this is all really important information. And had I really understood this years prior, I wouldn't have found myself in the position that I did at that time where I was like, I'm going to say on the brink of burnout, but also, you know, shortly after that, I burnt out. I had all of those symptoms that were so confusing, right? Like just so tired, exhaustion, tired to the bone. I was, like I said, I was procrastinating. I had self-doubt. All of these things were happening for me. And so as I went down this path, I did what is kind of like the quintessential coaching story. I started learning about all these things and I went, okay, every woman needs to understand this. If I'd only known this sooner, right? And so I decided by that time in my journey, I had started my own business. I was able to leave that toxic work environment. What actually happened is I got laid off. Best thing that ever happened to me. And I started my own business. And I started that business around copywriting and messaging strategy. But what I realized is that it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I was working with a lot of organizations in the wellness space, learning more and more about stress and all kinds of different modalities, working with different practitioners, and doing that on my own as well, trying to heal my chronic stress issues. And so as I went through that process, I decided, you know what? I want to help people with this. I want to do this as my work and as my life. I want to help, especially women. And so I went ahead, I got certified as a sleep, stress management, and recovery coach. I studied behavior change, and I started working with women and with organizations to really,
So
curb the, go ahead.
How many
Toni.
years ago?
So my current business where I do coaching and consulting, I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. And I love how much my corporate background has come into play here too. Like we make these pivots, especially I'm 45, proud of it. We make these pivots at this point in our lives, like in our early 40s, and we go, oh man, I'm starting from scratch. And I'm like, no, I'm actually not starting from scratch. I have all of this life experience and all of this experience with stress myself and healing it. And so making that pivot was actually, it felt so empowering. So I did that about 2.5 years ago and have been working with clients ever since.
So, Rebecca, I can tell from your demeanor and your voice that you're so excited about this topic. And it's probably, we're excited to have you here because so many of us have struggled with this over the years, especially in business and entrepreneurship. If for our listeners, what is the definition of burnout and what do people get wrong about burnout?
Yeah, I think this is such an important question because we hear this word come up so often, right? And it's often associated with work.
Mm.
And it's very often characterized by three main symptoms: exhaustion, apathy, like I just don't give a you know what anymore. And then also that self-doubt that that I had been experiencing. That was a big piece along with my exhaustion. But it's so much more than that. Like, I don't make a strong distinction between chronic stress and burnout. They are one and the same. So when we start thinking about like burnout symptoms and chronic stress symptoms, the list is super long. Like we're talking about sleep issues, fatigue, energy levels, right? Restlessness. When it comes to our physical self, it's lack of appetite, tightness, tension, chronic pain, all of these things, forgetfulness, brain fog, procrastination, going to a place of blaming others for issues, shutdown, disconnection. When all of these, when everybody's situation is a little bit different and how it shows up, but burnout really is chronic stress in our areas of life where we're experiencing mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. All three.
And you work with so many women, so you see all these patterns. Why are women so much more prone to burnout than, I guess, men?
Yeah. Men. And, here's the thing. Women in particular, we are putting an immense amount of pressure on ourselves to keep going, to keep working, no matter the cost. Some men do that for sure. But if you look around, you'll see that the people who are primarily doing that are the women in our lives, right? And we've been doing this for so long because we've seen our moms do it. We've seen our grandmothers do it, right? And we think this is just kind of how it's supposed to be. We push through. We just get it done, right? And so that's the main reason why we're seeing burnout at such high rates in women is this do-it-all mentality, and that we have to keep going no matter what.
The difference, though, is that perhaps our mom, my grandmother, they weren't working. They didn't have full-time jobs, Right. And I kind of want to maybe just be transparent that Toni and I, like we're the ones that are bringing in the bacon, you know, for the breadwinners.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens, knowing that our brains are like, we know that. So what happens if we stop?
The other thing too is,
Scary.
yeah, it is. It is scary.
Like,
It
just,
is scary.
I think that's, then I'd be in survival mode and I would be like, okay, well, my masculine energy,
Yeah.
which is my natural energy,
Mine too. That's why
I
we get
don't know
along.
who else I would go to.
Yeah.
I was just going to add on to that too, because I think it needs to be a part of the conversation as well. Like, I have 2 small kids at home
Yeah.
as well. And so my husband actually, God bless him, he's amazing. He stays home with the kids. I am the breadwinner and I am working. But the reality is that when something happens at home, if one of the kids gets sick or something happens, they still want me, even though he's there with them all the time. And so one of the challenges that I encounter regularly is like, they still want me. So if something's happening at home where they need more emotional support, I'm doing that just as much at home, and then I have to go back to work. Whereas our male counterparts, there's a lot of great dads out there. I want to really say that a lot of great dads that spend quality time with family, but I don't think it's necessarily quite the same for them if they're excelling at their career and then they go home and they've got kids. If something happens in the home, I've noticed, I don't know if I'm wrong here and you guys notice the same thing, they still want the mom, the kids. So I feel as though the husbands that are still top producing and excelling in their career, they don't have the same constraints in their home environment necessarily in those dynamics. Now, maybe there's 2 or 5% that would fall outside of that, but I don't notice it as often.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that's really important to talk about in this instance too is like, it's also okay as women if we don't want to stop. If we don't want to, if you love your career and you want to continue to rise in your career and build your business and make the money, like that's okay. But what happens is, and this is part of burnout too, is we've been conditioned, culturally conditioned in so many ways, societally conditioned, that it's not okay for women to want both or to keep striving when their kids are sick. And so then we get just like smacked upside the head with guilt and shame over that too, right? And that's all part of the symptoms of burnout and what leads us to the symptoms of burnout, I should say.
Mm-hmm. And so, what does this have to do with the nervous system? So, let's talk about that language and why it matters so much in your world.
Yeah, this is one of my absolute favorite topics because it gets to the core of so many things that feel confusing and that make us kind of doubt ourselves and our bodies and what is going on. And so there's a lot of talk about the nervous system right now. And it's fantastic because what's happened is there's been new research come out in the last 10, 20, 30 years that's bringing to light more information about how our nervous system works. Don't get me wrong, we've had it's existed forever, but we're talking about it more now, which is awesome. And so what I think this does too is I actually see this in my clients all the time, is these aha moments that they get when they start to realize what the nervous system is and how things like burnout are actually just an adaptation of your nervous system. So literally all of these crappy symptoms that we're experiencing are your body's reaction to what's going on. It's protective measures. So, just getting back to like super simple explanation of the nervous system is basically like your body's electrical wiring, right? That helps your body communicate with your brain. It's made up of your brain, your spinal cord, trillions of nerves that stretch everywhere, like roads and paths connecting every part of you, right? So I like to think of it like a supercharged direct message system. And your nervous system, and this is what's so, so important and something that so many people don't realize is that your nervous system controls your entire life experience. And I know that seems like a really strong, bold statement to make. But if you start to learn about your nervous system, you'll start to learn that it controls what you think and feel. It allows you to walk and talk and swallow and breathe, controls how well you sleep, your hormone function, your truth speaking ability, your emotional processing, right? All of these things are controlled by your nervous system as well. It's responsible for how you handle stress. And so once we realize that and realize that the language of the nervous system is really simple, it's basically input, interpretation, output. That's what's going on constantly, every second of every day in your system.
Can we be more specific? Does that mean like stomach pains, weight gain, inability to sleep, or weight loss, acne? Like, is that what you're alluding to?
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, 100%. So basically what happens, I'll explain this idea of input, interpretation, output, just as simply as I can. And it actually is a really simple concept. So basically all the time, all day long, we are taking in inputs. So we've got inputs that go back to our childhood, the things that went on, the experiences we had, if we experienced any traumas, whether it's big T, little t, all of these experiences are our inputs. My inputs right now, I am seeing you on the screen. That is a sensory input. I can feel my hands. That's a sensory input. Maybe I'm standing on a cold floor. That's a sensory. We're getting all of these things going on, coming into our body all day long. And then what happens is it's our brain's number one job. What happens with those inputs? They come in and our brain's job is to interpret safe or unsafe.
So flight or fawn.
Yeah. What am I going to do with this input? Right? What am I going to do with this input based on previous experience with an input similar to this and my present experience right now? Right? So your brain's only job in the whole world is to keep you alive and keep you safe. So it is in every second of the day kind of deciding safe or unsafe, safe or unsafe. And then based on its interpretation, it is presenting an output. Those outputs are things like you just asked about when we started talking about this. So it could be things like tension, neck tension and pain. It could be chronic pain in our lower back. It could be that idea of procrastination or lack of confidence. It could be, extreme fatigue. All of those different things are outputs of the nervous system based on what our brain is interpreting.
So you kind of explained like a negative feedback loop then, right? If you're operating in stress, it's just repeating the exact same cycle. I've been in that cycle before. It's very difficult to pull yourself out of it. How do we actually get past it? How do we start to create the change that we want to see in ourselves without getting pulled back into those patterns? It's like,
yeah. And so what do we typically do when we're in those patterns?
I mean, I'm normally in fight or flight.
So it's a little bit of a trick question, but what we typically do is we try to think our way out of those situations, right? Or we do mindset work. Which is awesome. I love some mindset work, right? But what happens is we go to these cognitive solutions. We look for cognitive solutions to what's going on with us, where it's really important. This is something that I share this and I get my clients are like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense. So the way that communication works in the body is that 80% of the communication is going from your body to your brain. 20%, only 20% is going from your brain to your body. So where do we have to start? We have to start in the body because what happens is so I said, mindset alone, right? It doesn't get us out of these states, these high stress states, whether it be that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, right? We have to heal it at the source. And these things are these fight, flight, freeze, self-preservation, survival, safety. These are all of our defenses that are there for a reason. And so what happens is, especially as women, we tend to push through those defenses, and our nervous system's like, whoa, yeah, no, no thanks. And then it shows up at the level of the body. So we get those health expressions. We get anxiety, depression, things like adrenal fatigue and the trouble sleeping, even things like being, we call it stress addiction, right? Where we've got this inability to slow down or stop or relax. And so what we need to do is we need to actually start in the body. That's how we make these changes. That's how we get, instead of doing it cognitively.
But what does that mean, starting in the body? Is that something like self-awareness and looking inward of, hey, maybe I actually feel pain in my joints that I wasn't paying attention to, I was pushing through? Maybe, how do you do it?
Yeah. So the first step is always awareness. We know this as coaches, in most things that we do, we have to start creating that awareness. One of the things that I do with my clients is this little exercise called notice and name, right? Where it's like paying attention to the sensations in our body, to what's activating us. And, I want to just say here that this isn't always easy, because so many of us have spent years, maybe like decades, ignoring what our body is trying to tell us, right? When I say ignoring, I don't mean that in a way to like shame people or imply that it's our fault for that. Like, some of us have just learned early on that what our bodies have to say doesn't really matter. And so it can be really hard for people to feel what's going on in their body. Yeah, Jenny.
And I want to add to that, because I'm in a good example of I believe stress, it allows me to push through things. And I actually say stress is really good for me. Like I'm very productive, and I don't really even label it as stress. And I'm super numb to that, because for decades, I'm so used to piling work on that it's normal for me. And then when I come into these blood work testing, my naturopath is always saying, hey, you're at high stress levels, but
you don't feel it anymore.
I don't physically feel it. I'm super numb to that.
Yeah. You got to be careful, because I couldn't feel anything in my body for a long time, like at all. And then I stopped feeling emotion completely. It was actually very difficult to get back, because then the awareness component that you're talking about, you cannot be aware of what's actually happening in your body if you cannot feel and cannot sense emotion. Really hard to get it back.
Yeah. And so back to that point about the brain interpreting safe or unsafe, when we've lived like this for so long, and then we try to start noticing, the brain's like, whoa, let's not go there. And then that's what makes it really hard. Like there's a ton of research on PTSD and meditation. And I hear this come up quite a bit in some of the podcasts that I listen to and stuff. And I always think this is so interesting and so important for us to be aware of. So this research, basically, quick summary of it is, researchers were working with people with PTSD and kind of trying to figure out what was going on. So they would go into meditation. They'd ask them to do these hour-long meditations. And what it would do is it would actually re-traumatize them, because it was war veterans, this one particular study that I'm thinking of. And so when they were asked to sit quietly and, try to turn everything off and, lay there with your eyes closed, what do you think is going to happen? Their brains start,
coming back with all those bad memories.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's really important. And I know we're going to talk about, kind of how do we actually, what can we do to get into our bodies a little bit easier? But one of the things I just want to say is, it's different for everyone. So you think of those folks with PTSD, the war veterans, right? And they couldn't do the hour-long meditations to start. So what did they do? Thankfully, the practitioners they were working with were like, okay, let's start smaller. So maybe it's a 10-minute walk in nature to start, versus an hour-long meditation that's actually going to totally activate you and bring up a trauma response. So that's a really important piece as we go about trying to figure out, okay, it's essentially what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how to send signals of safety to the brain. That is what this work is really all about, is trying to send signals of safety to the brain so that the brain allows us to do the stuff that we want to do in this life and do it while being healthy and not having these like trauma adaptations or, health issues on the backside of it.
Rebecca, so we know there's a list of 10 things. Go for the 10-minute walk, give yourself a bath, do a 10-minute meditation, go to a yoga class. These self-management tools are repeated over and over again in any library of magazines and blogs and even our podcast. But why is it so hard for some of us to schedule that in? Why? Why? We know even if it's in our calendar, we're like, oh, that's not priority. We can always push that back a little bit. There's something else that's more important. So what triggers that for us to not put that as a priority? And then secondly, how can we self-manage?
Yeah. Well, it's really simple. It's your nervous system interpreting it as a threat.
Mm.
So I know that seems really weird. Like, why is going to yoga a threat? Well, by choosing to go to yoga instead of choosing to sit at your desk and get another deal done, you're triggering a flood of potentially memories and things that are stored in your nervous system that are they're subconscious. They're under the level of your consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe, and I'm just going to make something up here, like maybe you, you chose to do a half marathon training like 10 years ago. And in the meantime, because you dedicated yourself to going and doing these runs, a couple times a week, you actually lost out on a couple of really important deals that would have made the difference for your family.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now it's 10 years later and you're like, dang, I really need to work on myself. I really need to like up my self-care game. I need to start going to yoga again. So then you're like, okay, boom, I'm doing it. I'm putting it in my calendar. I've got yoga on Wednesday night. Wednesday rolls around. It's 4:00. It's 5:00. Class is going to start at 6:30. You're like, I really got to go, but this deal's not done. I really got to go, but I can't. And your nervous system, your brain is like, if you leave your desk right now to go to yoga, this deal is going to fall through, even though it probably won't.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know, right? It's not life or death. And you have people to handle it, all the things, right? But your brain is remembering what happened. Your nervous system is remembering what happened 10 years ago, and it's keeping you stuck,
mm-hmm.
even though it's not an unsafe situation. It's interpreting it as unsafe based on your past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we have to do is we have to start reprogramming, rewiring. We have to start showing the brain, okay, hey, listen, this is a challenge. It's not a threat. No one's going to die here. No deals are going to be lost. My family is safe. I'm great. There's money in the bank. We can go take care of our health and it's going to be okay. And so we have to do things that get us to a place of creating more safety, training the nervous system, working with the nervous system on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Cortisol, the stress hormone. What are some common, I mean, we've talked about some of them, but what are some common symptoms of high cortisol and what are some natural ways to lower that stress hormone?
Oh, cortisol, my pal cortisol, often referred to as the stress hormone, right? And so we hear cortisol gets a really bad rap, but it's super important. So I just want to stress that right off the bat. So, we often hear like, oh, lower your cortisol, lower your cortisol. Well, we don't all have to be doing that, but it is really important to be aware of. So when cortisol is in balance, it's meant to rise in the morning to help us wake up, and then it dips in the evening to help us go to sleep. Now, there's people with high cortisol. What happens is due to a stressful lifestyle, oftentimes our cortisol gets out of whack and we start to see almost like it does the opposite, right? So we start to experience things like blood sugar imbalances, and other hormones are negatively impacted as a result of high cortisol. And then our sleep is all over the place, and we're constantly feeling like on edge and urgent and doing all things like that. So in terms of like what can we do to lower our cortisol naturally, there's a long list of things, and it really comes down to being dedicated to, healthy diet, adequate sleep, doing our stress management practices, getting the social support that we need, doing breathing drills. My favorite though is vagus nerve drills. And so vagus nerve drills, are you guys familiar? Are you familiar with the vagus
Please
nerve?
share.
No? Oh my goodness. Okay. So the vagus nerve is most important part of your nervous system, essentially runs from your brain stem down through your entire chest into your torso, down into your pelvic area. Vegas, not the Vegas that we go to for concerts and all that stuff. Vagus, vagus nerve. Vagus is actually Latin for wandering, because this is your largest nerve and it's wandering throughout your body, and it's basically that. Remember I talked about that communication? This is where it's like all these communication channels, your organs, everything are communicating to your brain through your vagus nerve. What happens, like any nerve, your vagus nerve can get pinched. Or it can, may need some activation. And so its primary responsibility is getting us back into what we call the parasympathetic branch of our nervous system. You might have heard of that. We've got those two branches, right? Sympathetic, parasympathetic. And the vagus nerve is what's responsible for getting us back into that rest and digest, or calm and respond, parasympathetic. And so we can do things throughout our day. This is one of my most favorite things to do, because it creates change at the level of the nervous system, and change at the level of the nervous system is immediate when we do these exercises. And so basically going back to my point about safe, unsafe, when we're doing these exercises and we're intentionally moving back into the parasympathetic, we're actually showing our brain, hey, we're safe, we're cool, we can keep going.
So what's an example? If you were going to take us through an exercise right now, what would you be recommending to us?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's work with our vagus nerve. These exercises, like I said, they create change almost immediately. And so I want to preface by saying that not every exercise is for every person, that sometimes these exercises, because we are working with the vagus nerve, we are working with the nervous system, they can actually create a bit of an emotional response. We're going to do a mild exercise right now, but just want people to be aware it can actually have a negative output from it. But usually what happens is we test, we see what's going on, and then we kind of go from there. And we always, when we're doing these types of exercises, want to do what we call minimum viable dosing. So we'll keep it really simple. So first thing we want to do, though, if it's accessible to you, we want to test. And one of the things that shows us whether we've got change at the level of the nervous system is range of motion. So a really easy way to test is to just move your head back and forth, turn your neck, and just notice, nice and slow, just notice where your gaze is landing. Kind of think to yourself, like, from a tension perspective, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay, so that's our test. And then we want to go into an exercise. So I'll share with you one of my favorites. It's called the salamander exercise. This is from Stanley Rosenberg. So this one involves really slow, intentional movements, and we're stimulating the vagus nerve with this, promoting relaxation and essentially reducing stress. So if we do this practice on a regular basis, we're working to foster a sense of calm and supporting our emotional well-being and enhancing our overall resilience. So what we do is we take our hands up, we put them on the back of our neck, arms out, hands are clasped on the back of our neck for support. And then we want to move our eyes to the left without moving our head. And just take a few intentional breaths. And we usually stay here for 30 to 60 seconds, or until we feel a bit of a release by way of a yawn or a sigh. And we don't have to wait the whole time. On this one, ooh, I saw that, Jenny. Was that a bit of a yawn? And then we come back to center and we go to the other side, to the right. And so we're basically working with the vagus nerve here. We're working with our vision. There's a lot going on. And then we come back to center, take a couple of just slow, intentional breaths, and then retest. Do you feel any more range of motion in your neck? Is your gaze landing anywhere further?
My neck feels less tight.
Awesome. So that's a good one for Toni. That's a good one for Toni.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also notice too, kind of like, are you feeling a little bit more calm? And did your heart rate slow a little bit? Another really easy one that we can do is ear massage. And so what we want to do is just at the top of our ear, we just start it's really simple. We're just directly, easy for me to say, stimulating a certain branch of the vagus nerve. Again, supporting that emotional well-being. So we're starting at the top of the ear and just massaging gently, and then moving to the center of the ear and massaging gently, and then coming down to the lobes and massaging gently. We didn't do a retest on that one, but if you do it like 3 or 4 times and then retest and see if you've got a little bit more range of motion. So those are just a couple of vagus nerve exercises that you can do. You can literally, what I work on with my clients is like, how can we habit stack those things into our life? Like, make it almost like brushing your teeth, right? We start to work with the vagus nerve. You can do it in 2 different ways. We use it to train the nervous system. And then we also use it in moments of high stress. So you could do something like one of these techniques, as you're about to head into a big meeting, if you're feeling like your heart rate is a little too high, or you're ticked off in traffic, you can kind of, tap into your vagus nerve and the power of it.
Is it the same? Like I like to tap my
EFT
collarbone,
tapping, so good.
And my third eye, and just here at my temples and below my eyes. Is that similar exercises?
Yeah. So have you done EFT tapping?
Yes.
Is that what you've studied EFT tapping? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's similar, it's a different concept, but similar. Yes. So when you're doing the tapping, like I do a lot of speaking. And so I will do a lot of tapping on the jaw. I also have a vibrating device that I use on my jaw. So I'll run it up and down along the jawline to stimulate the vagus nerve, and do it on the throat as well. It can be really helpful because of the different branches of the vagus nerve that are down here. So that touch is really important. And then also, the tapping is important, but you're hitting different, very specific spots when you're doing the EFT. And with the vagus nerve stuff, it's more of a sensory and kind of stimulation of the vagus nerve.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well,
we're pretty relaxed now.
Yeah. I think we're just going to snooze after
go to sleep.
episode. Rebecca, you talked about sleeping. And you and I have had some private conversations about my sleeping habits, which are,
oh my God,
really
please tell
awful.
her it's not normal. It's not healthy.
Even last night, I finished like 3 courses just because it was expiring, and that was a reason I stayed up till 3:00. But I believe in my head that if I get 4 hours sleep, it's the same as somebody getting 8 hours sleep. I can function the same, even better. I convince myself that I can perform even better.
Look at her face right now. And also, do you remember when we had Dr. Courtney on from Aurora Integrative?
Yeah.
And she challenged you to think about your sleep patterns and that you were in a habit with that? Okay.
Yeah. It's not a very good habit. And so
how do we help Jenny?
My question is...
Is there a question here?
Yeah,
I mean, this is a personal question. Most listeners are probably not in the same boat as me. but I don't sleep a lot. And I want to use some of your, maybe some tips right now. I have no problem falling asleep. I have no problem getting up. I have no problem. I don't hit snooze or anything. So if the alarm goes off, I'm out of bed right away, even with 2 hours sleep or 8 hours sleep. But I guess maybe one question for me is like, what can I do so that I don't feel like I have so much to do? Like as soon as I get up.
Yeah.
Because I want to get it done before I go to bed. So I'm more of a night owl. Like I'd rather do something in the middle of the night, like clean, so I know it's clean before I go to bed. Or if I'm, let's just say it's like late night and I'm on an empty gas tank, I'm running home, or like I'm driving back home and I'm on empty, I'd rather fill it up at night than deal with it in the morning. Versus like my partner would rather, he'll just park his car on an empty and then I get nervous I would get nervous in the morning. So I like to get things done at nighttime. It's like way beyond sleeping time.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, there is, but there's two big things that I think we should talk about here. So first of all, if something like filling your gas tank before you get home, instead of waiting to do it in the morning, is going to cause you to have less stress, then fill the damn tank at night. Okay? Like, just do it. And I say this to clients all the time. Oh, I know I need to put my phone away for an hour before bed. And, I really enjoy scrolling on TikTok, watching cat videos for 10 minutes. It's like, it relaxes me, but I know I should I'm like, watch the damn cat videos for 10 minutes. Like, if it brings your stress, like if you're going to do this for 2 hours and then you're, procrastinating going to sleep and then you're tired in the morning, like then we'll talk about it being an issue. But if you want to stop for gas, if you want to look at cat videos for 10 or 15 minutes, like have at her, friend. Like, let's do it. So that's one piece, right? Second thing I want to just mention is when it comes to sleep, yes, we always hear this, like, you need 8 hours sleep. You need 8 hours sleep. The window is, for most people, is 7 to 9 hours. There are some people who need less. There are some people who need more. Is there a chance that Jenny falls in the category of people who need less? Possibly. Does she only need 2 hours? Hells no.
Can I share a funny story right now that I would like to keep in this episode? So, as someone who knows Jenny quite well and loves her dearly, and what I love most about her is that, she's a person of really high integrity, can get a lot done. Of course, she's efficient and an excellent team leader and a really good friend. I believe that she can run on less sleep than most people. And so when I say that you need to work on this, it's not coming from a place of trying to shame you to be like, hey, you need more sleep. But I would like to give an example right now of how I have seen her so exhausted from not sleeping that when we were supposed to go to Edmonton for an event, I was supposed to pick her up first thing in the morning and we were going to catch a flight. So I message her before I go. No response. I'm like, that's weird. She always replies. Call her that I'm on my way. No response. That's weird. Did something happen to her? Outside on the street at like 6:30 a.m., buzzing her apartment. No response. So you had a lot of work then. I know that you were running on very little sleep. I thought something happened to her. I was not angry that she was not there. I ended up leaving for the airport without her, but I thought something happened to her. And then I'm like, shit, I have to try and get a hold of her family. I'm like, what's happening? I was spiraling. So I think that she can run on less sleep than other people. And I think because she does it so often, she's become very used to it. But my worry is that when you're doing that over and over again without the proper rest, like clearly you were so exhausted, you couldn't hear anything. So you need a little bit more sleep.
I pushed myself. Yeah.
And those are legitimate concerns for your pal. I completely agree. And so if I was working with Jenny, what I would do, it would be really hard, but I would challenge you to look at all the things that you are asking yourself to do in a day and really get to the core of why you are wanting and needing to do those things, and try to determine what it is that we can remove from that list so that you can focus on getting the sleep that you need. Do you need to do the 3 courses, even though they're going to expire tomorrow? Are they absolutely necessary, or are they something that you think you need to do because you've got a feeling that, of not enoughness? And I'm totally making stuff up. This is not necessarily Jenny's story, but, we look at all of these things and go, okay, is this really necessary? I give clients I ask my clients to make a not to do list and add as much as they can to it from their day. And a lot of times it's not even just tasks, but it's like, I am not going to, do more education because I think that I don't have the knowledge that I need. And yeah, again, I use that as an example because you brought that up as something that you did last night, and may not be, entirely relevant to this situation. But that's what I would do, is I would look at, are these things really necessary? These things that are keeping you from getting the sleep that you need. We know that sleep is so, we can't live without sleep. We all sleep. It's extremely important. There are body, physiological functions that happen while we're sleeping that allow us to function during the day at our best. And so if we're not getting the sleep we need, even if we feel like we're okay, at some point, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, maybe not even a year from now, but at some point it will catch up with us. It's science. It's there. The proof is there. We know this. Okay. So sleep.
Well, you're kind of close about the enoughness. It's more about not wanting to disappoint myself immediately. By completing the courses, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to be more hireable. I'm going to be more valuable to the system, so that's a whole different episode. Rebecca, this is about you. We want to know, can you share more about your Breaking Up with Burnout workshops?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Breaking Up with Burnout is a 7-day micro course that I have coming up. By the time you listen to this, we may have gone through it already, but it will be available on my website if you want to come check it out, RebeccaVigelius.com. It's one of the ways, it's a really fantastic way to get both a high level but deep look at this type of work and how it can apply to your life and helping you kind of move through burnout, work with your nervous system. I always say stress mastery is an inside job, right? And we have to focus on our internal environments. And so this is how we thrive, is by focusing on the internal versus looking at changing a bunch of stuff on the outside and all the external things. So Breaking Up with Burnout is my 7-day micro course that is coming out very soon. Really excited about that. And you can find out more information on my website, RebeccaVigelius.com.
Awesome. And what other programs do you offer if someone wants to seek maybe some one-on-one time with you?
Yeah, I have a one-to-one coaching program called The Rested Edge, where I work with women in 3-month containers. I have also love the work that I do with organizations, inside organizations, working with groups and teams and leaders, helping them really understand their inner operating system and how that affects their communication style and their ability to get results and be productive. And have high performance within organizations. So that piece too. All the information about one-to-one coaching and my corporate consulting is on my website, or just reach out to me. Come find me on Instagram at Rebecca Vigelius, or you can shoot me an email, Rebecca@RebeccaVigelius.com. I'm always happy to chat with people.
Awesome.
Well, before you go, we have 5 rapid fire questions to ask you. We always end on that.
Love it.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
What is your go-to method for instant relaxation?
Oh, so there's a vagus nerve drill called the tragus pull, which we probably don't have time for, but that is my number one
What preferred sleep position do you recommend for a great night's sleep?
Oh man, wherever you're able to get a great night's sleep, I would say. I sleep on my back and on my side. Some people like to sleep on their stomach. If you have a problem with snoring, sleeping on your back is not great. Everybody's a little bit different.
Okay. Do you have a favorite playlist or a type of genre that helps you relax?
Ooh. So I do love country music.
Yeah.
And it's not always relaxing, but it really makes me happy if it's the right type of country music. I also have done some psychedelic therapy myself. And so I have some playlists from my psychedelic therapy sessions that I've done that are very relaxing. I love to listen to them when I'm on walks or even working out. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm. What's one comfort item that you cannot live without?
Okay, now this is going to seem... Okay, so two things just popped in my head. I have one dog and two cats, and I adore them. And they bring me, they're the perfect nervous system regulation tools. But I also love books. And so I take physical books with me wherever I go. And being able to sit and open a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, is always extremely comforting to me.
Which leads us to our final question. What is your favorite book to read for self-help?
Self-development books. Okay, I have so many. Actually, let me share. So one of the books that has helped to inform my work is a really fantastic book. Dr. Valerie Rain is the author, and it's called Patriarchy Stress Disorder: The Invisible Inner Barrier to Women's Happiness and Fulfillment. It is a brilliant book. If you haven't heard of it, pick it up. It'll open your eyes.
Oh, thank you for that, Reco. Okay, well, Rebecca, this was such an awesome session to be able to learn from you to excel our health in many ways. I truly believe, we are a good example of women who just are always on the go. And we just really never stop and think about how are we treating ourselves, right? So I really thank you for sharing your knowledge, and I definitely have to get on a call with you again. I know we've had already a few of them, but I just wanted to let you know that I really appreciate how just that these little moments of chatting has really shifted some parts of my life already.
Amazing insights, Rebecca. Thanks for sharing them with us and our listeners.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks.